I don't think the average person understands the depth of human trafficking. It's a hidden crime. It's not in their Publix. It's not in their front door. They don't see it in their workplace. It's there, but it's not part of their world, nor do they recognize it. So the critical thing is to educate people, to let them know it's here, and that there's something that they need to do about it, whether it's labor or whether it's sex trafficking. It used to be called by many other names, but it is what it is. And just because it is not in front of you, and just because it is not at your front door, doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
If I can remember back to like around the age of 5, back then I felt like it was normal because it was the only thing that I knew. I had 2 older brothers that are 8 and 10 years older than me, and so it was kind of like I was an only child. But both of my parents, as far back as I can remember, were drug addicts and alcoholics. Like, I was told before I even started school that if I talked about the things that happened at home, I would be taken to a bad place. And even though I didn't know what I wasn't supposed to talk about, I just knew I couldn't talk about anything that happened at home. Then I started being sexually abused by a neighbor around the age of 5. And my parents knew about it, but they didn't do anything about it because they were afraid of the police coming in, because they not only did drugs, but they sold them, and so they were all over our house. And it was after that that my mom got involved in more drugs and started going out to the bars, and I would go with her. It was called Blue Jeans Lounge or something. And a lot of times, if I was with her, she would just leave me in the car. And there were some times when she would come out and leave with somebody else, and so then I had to walk home in the middle of the night by myself. And then she eventually started prostituting herself for her drugs. I went with her one time because I didn't want to stay at home because I never knew when she was coming back. And so I was with her, and her drug dealer offered her a $10 piece of crack for me instead of for her. I even asked her why she did it, and she said, because now I can get what I want and I don't have to do anything. After the first time I was sold, it happened more on a regular basis, to where she would either take me to her drug dealer, or he would come and get me either from the house or from the bus stop, and he would take and sell me to other people, probably a couple times a week. And in that time, I got pregnant twice and was given 2 abortions. I would ask my teachers for detention so that I wouldn't have to go home right after school, because I never knew if he was going to pick me up from the bus stop or if my mom was going to be home. It was bad, but I would have done anything to make my mom want me. I would be moved from group home to group home because they didn't deal with kids like me. And I was eventually placed in a group home that was a residential treatment center for kids in foster care. And when I got there, I eventually learned that the staff were friends with my trafficker. And so I continued being trafficked while I was in foster care.
Did you try to get help being in foster care?
There wasn't any help. These were the people I lived with. He got temporary custody of me, but I still, I didn't want to be with him. I wanted to be with my mom. And so I didn't want to go to school. I felt like that was pointless because nobody in my family graduated high school. So I ended up spending a lot of time with my high school guidance counselor, and then I ended up living with her and her family. She would spend time with me, and she never pressured me to tell her anything, but she said that she could always tell there was more that had happened to me than I told her. So she just wanted to be there for me. Well, I graduated high school and started going to college, but I still wanted a relationship with my mom, so she would resurface every now and then. And any time that I went to see her, I would end up being trafficked again. I think the thing that had the biggest impact was when she tried to commit suicide. She told me that she hated me, never loved me, and never wanted me, and that's why she wanted to die. And so anytime that she would contact me, I felt like if I did something to upset her, she was going to commit suicide and it was going to be my fault. I finally decided to go to counseling, and I started going to a support group for survivors of sexual assault. And some of the people there, we went to a human trafficking awareness day. And I had heard about human trafficking, but I didn't connect it with anything that I experienced, because most of the stuff that I saw, it was people tied up and stuff. But at the awareness day, they talked about what human trafficking is. And that's when I realized that everything that had happened to me was human trafficking, and that it wasn't my fault, and that I could talk about it.
Education is so incredibly important in so many different ways, not just for the awareness and training for people who are not personally affected by human trafficking, but for those who are vulnerable and are being sucked into this heinous practice, for them to understand what is happening to them, that it is not their fault and that it is wrong.
Law enforcement can't put eyes and ears in every place. And so an educated and informed public becomes eyes and ears in places that law enforcement can't get to. So we really need an education awareness campaign that raises the level of awareness in our communities so that the trafficker doesn't feel secure, that he can even move through the public with anonymity, and the victims become confident that somebody's going to see their plight, and that the buyers become very discomforted because they know somebody's watching them that knows what they're looking for.
I guess I would have wished that I told somebody, because there were plenty of situations where I could have, but then there were also plenty of situations where people could have noticed that stuff was happening, like asking my teachers for detention, just even being a 12-year-old going in a store buying a pregnancy test. There were just multiple times that people may not have known what was happening, but they should have picked up on something.
Really, the way that we're going to impact and end human trafficking is by a societal change that begins with every individual looking at themselves and then looking at their neighbors and saying slavery in any form, and particularly human trafficking at this moment, is something that we cannot tolerate. The Florida Alliance is uniquely positioned to help with that societal change because it resides as a support to the statewide council, but it also resides in that private space, that societal space, that education and awareness space, that innovative technology space that allows for it to flex itself into society and make those changes.